All right. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope live stream. I hope that you all can hear me here. I have my computer up, so hopefully I'll be able to see if you're having any issues with the audio quality here or the video quality. Just throw it in the chat there, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that. But welcome to the live stream here. In the spirit of working from home, I'm here on my lanai in beautiful and luckily sunny Pepakeo, Hawaii, just outside of Hilo, here on the east side of the Big Island. My name is Cam Wipper. I am one of the remote observers at CFHT. In that, my normal job is to conduct the nighttime operations of the observatory. And I usually do that about, I'd say about 90 nights per year. I'll conduct the nighttime operations. I just finished on Tuesday, and I'll be back again in August. But for now, I'm your host today for our live stream for Lahaina Noon here in Hawaii. So before we get started, though, I do want to hope this message comes to you well, and I hope you are all doing well despite the surprising and unusual circumstances we find ourselves in here in 2020. And with that, I'll get started here. So, as I said, we're quite lucky. As you can see behind me here, we have nice blue skies up there with no clouds, so we should be doing quite well here for our Lahaina Noon broadcast. All right, looks like we're streaming all right. I'm glad to see that. And like I said, if you have any audio or video quality issues, just throw it in the chat, and hopefully we can resolve those shortly. So just to get started here, what we're going to do, first we're going to talk a little about what Lahaina Noon is, why it happens here in Hawaii and not in places like the mainland United States or places like Europe or Canada, for example, why it happens here and only in the tropic regions of the Earth. We'll also talk a little bit about what the astronomical significance of Lahaina Noon is, and just how you can see it yourself if you happen to be down here in certain times of the year. So to get started here, what is Lahaina Noon? So Lahaina Noon is called, it's a name that was coined actually rather recently, back in the 1990s, according to some research I did. But it's a phenomenon that has existed since the beginning of the Earth itself here in the tropics of our planet. Now, Lahaina Noon is a name that means cruel sun. It comes from the Hawaiian word meaning Lāhainā, which translates to cruel sun. Now, that's a name you might be familiar with. It's the name of a city over on Maui, a beautiful destination there. If you have spent time in Lahaina, you'll know what I'm talking about. That city is also named after this very phenomenon, simply because if you've been to Lahaina, you'll know that it is very hot in Lahaina. It's very sunny, very dry, and it's very warm. And that same phenomenon is why we have our Lahaina Noon. It means cruel sun, and it is defined as the moment when the sun is directly overhead, exactly above us in the sky. Now that's a point that in astronomy we call the zenith point. Zenith means the very top of the sky. So if you go out in the night sky and you look straight up, directly above your head, that's what's known as zenith. And so when the sun passes through the zenith point, then we have Lahaina Noon. As I mentioned, that only happens in the tropical regions of the Earth. It does not happen in more temperate regions, and that is because in those regions, Lahaina Noon does not occur because the sun does not pass directly overhead. The sun is always, on the eastern, or western, or southern parts of the sky if you're in the north, and the eastern, western, or northern parts of the sky are in the south. It's never directly overhead. Only in the tropics does the sun pass directly overhead. And that is essentially what defines the tropical regions of the Earth, is this ability for the sun to go directly overhead. Now, you may be talk about going on vacation in the tropics if you're from a more temperate place, such as myself. I grew up on the west coast of Canada, and so we talked about when I was younger going to going to the tropics for vacation because the sun is always sunny there. It's always beautiful and warm, and that's because the sun is at its highest visibility in these regions of our planet. There's the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere at about 23.5 degrees north, and the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere at about 23.5 degrees south. Now in these regions, this is what defines the tropics of the Earth. Above that we have the temperate regions, above in the north, and below in the south we have the temperate regions. And at these points of our planet here, this is where the sun can pass directly overhead. If you're north of the Tropic of Cancer or south of the Tropic of Capricorn, the sun will never pass directly overhead, and so you are no longer in the tropics. That's what defines the tropics. Now the word tropic, it comes from a Greek word meaning to turn or to adapt, and that happens when the sun hits its highest, most northerly point or most southerly point, and then turns back and heads the other way. That's where we get the word tropics from. So, as you can see, I mentioned we're here just outside of Hilo in the little town of Pepekeo, which is about 10 minutes north of downtown Hilo. And we had some cloudy weather this morning, so I was a little bit concerned, but as you can see, we got some real nice blue skies here. One cloud going over us right now, but that's okay. Hopefully by the time it comes to Lahaina Noon itself, we'll be able to see our shadows. Now, you may be asking yourself, it's already afternoon. You'll notice it's around 10 after 12 here, and yet we're talking about Lahaina Noon still has not occurred yet. Here in Pepekeo, outside of Hilo, Lahaina Noon will occur at 12:27 p.m. It does not occur at noon itself, but almost at 12:30 in the afternoon, almost a half an hour after noon. Now that's a little bit strange. Why would something that we call Lahaina Noon not occur at clock noon? Now that is for a very human reason, I guess we could say. That's because us humans, we like to give the world order and make sense and give nice, neat boundaries to things that in nature do not have such neatness to them. And one of these things we've done is to come up with the concept of time zones. Here in Hawaii, we have known as the Hawaii Aleutian time zone at GMT minus 10. That means we're 10 hours later than Greenwich Mean Time, which is our base time zone here on Earth. And wherever you are today, you'll have your own time zone. Perhaps it's Pacific time on the West Coast, Eastern time on the East Coast, or something else even more further afield. And for the whole concept of time zones to work, we need a very particular set of latitudes and longitudes. And so the longitudes define where our time zones are. And so we'll say perhaps the time zone begins at 130 degrees or 110 degrees, or perhaps it follows some sort of political boundary between a country or a state or a province. And that means that all the regions within this time zone have the same time, but they're of course not in the same place. And that means that the sun passes through, as it moves through the sky, it'll pass overhead through what's known as solar noon at a slightly different time for each place within the same time zone. And as a result, what's known as solar noon, this point when the sun is highest in the sky, does not align with clock noon or observed noon, simply because clock noon and observed noon is something that us humans have come up with and not something that is a natural thing. So that's why our Lahaina Noon does not occur within at the same point as clock noon. Here on the Big Island, we're roughly 30 minutes off, so we have it occurring at 12:27. So let me check my notes here, making sure I'm saying everything I wanted to tell all of you. All right, so I think we've got to the point where we can show just how we're going to demonstrate Lahaina Noon. What I'm going to do here is turn the camera around, and we get a few demonstrations here. So our first demonstration we have is this apparatus. As you can see, it's a vertical pole here. Now, if we look closely at the pole, as we're getting close to Lahaina Noon, In a more northerly location, this pole would cast a long shadow. But if we look down here low on the ground, we can see it has a very short shadow. There's the base of the pole, and there's the top of the shadow. Only a couple inches there, or maybe a few centimeters between the top of the pole. All right, and we'll come around to the other side. So you can see there's our pole on the ground. And then here we have our second apparatus. This here is hanging from the eave here on the house. On a long string, we come all the way down, and we find our earth here hanging on the string. We can see it too is casting a shadow there on the ground. There's our planet right there, and here's the block attached to the roof, the hook, and our short little string connecting the earth. So you can see we're getting quite close to Lahaina Noon now. The string is very short here on the ground, but we're not quite there. We can still see the string itself. How will we know when we get to Lahaina Noon? The string will be totally hidden. The shadow will have moved directly below the hook, and so we'll know we're right at Lahaina Noon. The same for our vertical pole here. The shadow itself will totally disappear from the ground right there, and the vertical pole will cast no shadow. So you can see right there, that's how we're going to demonstrate Lahaina Noon itself. We'll come around here to our little clock right here. We're looking for 12:27. We can see it's about 14 minutes after 12, so we're looking for another maybe, I would say, another 12 minutes or so before Lahaina Noon will occur. So we still have time. So a little bit of a recap for those of you who might just be joining us here. My name is Cam Wipper. I'm one of the remote observers for the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope, and we're live streaming the occurrence of Lahaina Noon here in Hilo. Well, just outside Hilo in Pepikeo. So we want to talk a little bit about why it occurs here in the tropics and not in more northerly or southerly locations. But if you happen to live here in Hawaii, you can observe this for yourself. If you're here on the east side of the Big Island around Hilo, you can simply go outside and observe this right now. If you don't have a large pole here, the vertical pole or earth on a string, which to be honest, you probably don't, you may be able to use simply something that stands vertically on its own, such as a water bottle. You simply place a water bottle outside in the sun, and you'll be able to see that it casts no shadow in just a few minutes. Now, if you live somewhere else here in the state of Hawaii, or perhaps here on the Big Island, your time may be slightly changed. And with Lahaina Noon, because of the way the sun works and the way our time zones work, and the way that the state is oriented in a eastern, mostly east-west direction, the time changes depending on your locale. For more southerly parts of the state, it occurs in this point as the sun, it'll occur later, and for northerly locations, it'll occur earlier. And the opposite is true on the first occurrence of Lahaina Noon. Now that brings us to an interesting point here in that Lahaina Noon occurs twice each year. Lahaina Noon will occur in Hawaii, it'll occur in late May, and then it'll occur again here in July. Now you'll notice those dates do not correspond to anything particular, nothing like the summer solstice or an equinox, but they're equally on either side of the summer solstice. On the summer solstice, that is when Lahaina Noon will occur at its most northerly location on the Tropic of Cancer. That's how we define summer solstice. It's when the sun is directly overhead the Tropic of Cancer. The same is true for the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, which they call the summer in the south, will be when the sun is directly over the Tropic of Capricorn in the south. Because Hawaii here is south of the Tropic of Cancer, we can view it twice over the course of the year. And so we have an occurrence in May and an occurrence in July. and that occurs in the May occurrence is when the sun moves north, comes up from the south as winter ends and moves into springtime. It comes up past the tropic, past us in Hawaii, and then summer solstice. It hits it's the above head on there in summer solstice, and then it comes back down in July, which is what we're viewing right now. My neighbor there, you might hear that. He's got the motorbike there, so he's just taken off. So hold on. All right, I think we're all quiet again. So as I said, this is the second occurrence of Lahaina Noon as the sun travels from its more northerly location in the northern part above where the Tropic of Cancer is, and it travels again south towards the winter here. And so we watch that here, and we can watch it occur here in Hawaii. Now, if you live, say, on Maui or Oahu, in July, you'll unfortunately will have already missed the occurrence of Lahaina Noon. It will occur earlier because you're more northern. But the opposite is true in the springtime. In the May occurrence, the more southerly parts of the island chain have first. So, and if you live south of Hilo here, perhaps you live down in Puna, or you live in the Ka'u in the South Point area, Lahaina Noon is yet to occur. And so you'll be, in the next few days, you can go outside and take a look at Lahaina Noon then. So let's take a look. We're getting what 12:20, I think, here. So let's take a look at our shadow demonstrations once more. Let's change our camera around here. So we can see once more we're getting to be quite close. We can see there's our Earth right there hanging on the string. And we can see that the shadow there is getting to be quite close. We have a bit of a nice breeze here. The trades are blowing right today, so we have a bit of a breeze coming up, but we still see the shadow there is very short. And the same is true over here. Right there we can see our large pole is almost non-existent right there, so we're getting quite close. Only a few moments now from Lahaina Noon. If you are interested in calculating Lahaina Noon for your location, perhaps to get ready for next year or later on in the next few days, the resource I use to calculate Lahaina Noon is the NOAA Solar Calculator, the NOAA Solar Calculator. You simply put that into Google or your perhaps your other favorite search engine, and you can take a look for it there. You can simply look up the times of solar noon for each day, and that will tell you the angle of the sun in your particular location. Any angle above 89 degrees or so is indicative that Lahaina Noon will occur on that day. So let's see, where are we at here? I guess I can simply recap if you're joining us here again. We're live streaming the occurrence of Lahaina Noon here in Pepikeo, just north of Hilo on the Big Island. My name is Cam Wipper. I'm one of the telescope operators, or remote observers we're known as, for CFHT. I normally spend my time in the day sleeping because I work at night normally, but I happen to be awake for Lahaina Noon this afternoon. So I'm happy to join you here from my working from home environment, which is here on my lanai at my house here in Pepikeo. So just to address something that you may have heard of, you may have known that we are expecting a hurricane to occur here in Hawaii this weekend. We're looking for Hurricane Douglas. It's inbound. We're expecting it to arrive perhaps Saturday night or Sunday morning. So most of us are getting prepared for the storm, and we're doing our bit. But as the saying goes, the calm before the storm, we have a beautiful afternoon here on the Big Island. That's quite happy. It was rather rainy and cloudy this morning, so I wasn't sure if we were going to have a great show, but the sun's come out, and I'm quite happy about that. But as I said, we're getting prepared for the hurricane here, and we hope that it will perhaps turn a bit more north or not quite be as severe. And but if you have friends or family here in Hawaii, or you're here in Hawaii yourself, make sure you are prepared and ready for our storm here. Follow the advisories of all of our local government here, who do their best. Civil defense and the mayor's office do their best to look after us and keep us all safe. So make sure you keep yourself and your family safe. And we'll all get through this storm together. The same goes for those of us who are living here on Earth, which, let's be honest, just about everybody. we're all living through the COVID-19 pandemic right now, and of course I'm here at home by myself, so I'm not wearing a mask, but I never far. Always keep my masks close if you're out in public. Make sure you're wearing those masks as well, and again, we'll all get through that safely and without any of our friends or family coming to harm. Okay, so we're getting close to Lahaina Noon now. We're looking at only a couple minutes away. Unfortunately, it looks like we have a cloud directly overhead, but that's okay. It looks like a fairly small one, so hopefully that'll blow over shortly here. But we're getting quite close. If you missed the beginning of the live stream here, Lahaina Noon is what happens when the sun is directly overhead. That's what we name for the phenomenon here when the sun is directly overhead at solar noon. Solar noon is what's known as the Earth's highest point, when the sun is at its highest point in the sky. When the solar noon, when the sun's at its highest point, occurs when it's at the zenith point, which is the point directly above your head in the sky. When solar noon occurs with the sun at zenith, that's what's known as Lahaina Noon. And it does, like I mentioned earlier, it only occurs in the tropics because that's the only place on Earth where the sun is directly overhead. All right, so we're getting quite close now. Let's turn the camera around. You can see down here. Once again, there's our Earth on a string here. We can see the string is quite long, hanging all the way from the eave here of the house. Nice there, clamped to the eave. We come all the way down our string, and we can see all the way down here that the shadow is directly below the Earth. If we come up and view it from above, you can see it's very difficult to see the shadow. And that's because the sun is nearly directly overhead. The same is true for our pole here. You can see we are getting quite close here. Quite close. And we'll come back here to our planet Earth right there. You can see there, this is the faint shadow right here. That is the shadow of our hook attached to the roof. There's our block attached. So the hook comes down, and here is the shadow of the Earth. There's the end of the hook, and here is the Earth itself. We can see, even though we have this very, very long string all the way up, we cannot see that string at all. It's totally hidden by the shadow of the Earth right here. All we can see is all we can see there is the hook extension. Oh, I hope you all can still hear me there. I see some network issues, but I hope I'm back here. We can see there the hook and the shadow of the Earth right there. So looking at our clock right here, we can see we are just about a minute away from Lahaina Noon. So the sun is just about at its very highest point in the sky right now. And we can see that the Earth's shadow is totally covering that of the string. Of course, the breeze comes up and blows it around a little bit, but you can see there that we cannot see any sort of shadow of the string when, of course, the wind isn't playing tricks on us. If we look around some of the other objects here on the lanai here we have the planet pot here. Again, the shadow straight down from the top. There's no extension there at all. We can see that it's straight below it. And the same story with the shadow of the umbrella right here. Straight down, straight below our pole. So there you have it. Lahaina Noon has occurred here in Pepakeo, just outside of Hilo. I hope if you're on the Big Island, you had a chance to go outside. And the sun will be essentially overhead for the next few minutes. So if you want to head outside and see Lahaina Noon for yourself, you can head outside right now here in Hilo and take a look. Of course, you're a little bit further away. The sun won't be directly overhead, but the shadows it casts will still be very, very small, which is a rather dramatic effect if you're like me and you grew up somewhere that was not in the tropics and are used to the sun always casting long shadows. Here in Lahaina Noon, there are no shadows at all. So with that, I think we'll wrap up the broadcast here, but I do want to wish you all well. I hope you and all your ohana stay safe during our storm here this weekend, and of course continue to do so in this COVID pandemic that we're all living through right now. Stay safe and continue to look up. Of course, if you haven't seen hope you all got a chance to see the comet Neowise as well. It's a very beautiful sight in the sky. So mahalo again for joining us here for this Lahaina Noon live stream. Once again, it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you this afternoon, and I hope we can do more of these events in the future. Let us know if you enjoyed this there in the comments, and thanks very much. Stay safe and have a enjoyable weekend. Aloha.